parts. Obviously, there is an inlet of the vaporizer, there is an out. Okay, there is an inlet, there is an outlet. Okay, there is this bypass chamber over here, and there is a vaporizing chamber. Okay, and here this is an assembly from where I can fill the liquid agent, and this is the liquid, anesthetic liquid. Okay. Okay. So now this is the schematic diagram of a variable bypass vaporizers. All your vaporizers that I told you, which I'll show you ahead, their photos, they're all based on this variable bypass principle. All right. So you should understand this in case you're asked any of these vaporizers in the exam. You should know how it functions. Okay. So all the other like the vaporizers, although the names are different, they have only a few tweaks in them. Otherwise, the main concept is the same. So we have something known as the inlet. Okay, so this is the inlet from the fresh gas comes. Okay, so your oxygen nitrous mixture arrives over here. All right. Now, if it is at 0, I have kept it at 0. Means what? There is going to be no vapors going. Okay, no vapors joining. The vaporizer is not going to give any isoflurane. Suppose this is isoflurane. No isoflurane is joining. So what will happen if this is 0? This all the gas will come from here. This is the route, okay, that the gas goes by. This is the route, the fresh gas route. Okay. So it will go out directly, and this is the outlet. This is the outlet of the vaporizer. So because it is at 0, and this is the anesthetic liquid over here. So I'll just label this. This is the anesthetic liquid. Here you have the vapors. So I'll denote it with red. So now if I switch on, now see, these are the parts of it. There is something known as, this is inlet, there is outlet, there is a bypass chamber, this is the vaporizing chamber. Okay, this is where my isoflurane anesthetic liquid is present. And here, as I told you, the liquid has the capacity to evaporate. So vapors are going to form, and these red dots, you can see these are the vapors which are present within this chamber. If my fresh gas comes here, it will, in the vaporizing chamber, it will pick up the vapors and join the other fresh gas, the other part. Okay. So now let's just understand, if I switch this on and I make this at 1%, suppose. Okay, I have switched it on. I've switched on my dial. All right. Now what has happened? The fresh gas which is going to come. Okay, it's with black color I'm showing. So fresh gas is going to go, some amount of the fresh gas will go in the bypass chamber. This is the bypass chamber. Bypass chamber means what? It has bypassed the vapors. It has bypassed the vapors. So some amount of the gas will bypass the vapors, and they will go like this. They are not coming towards vapors. Some amount of the gas will come like this. It will go through this. What is this? I have labeled a spiral tube. This tube is a spiral because it has to come to the vaporizing chamber, right? So some portion will travel through this, and it has entered the vaporizing chamber. Now it's come here. Now what it will do? It will pick up all the vapors. So now it is traveling through the vaporizing chamber. And while traveling over the vaporizing chamber, it is picking up the vapors. The oxygen nitrous is picking up the isoflurane vapors. Then what will happen? It will go up, right? The gas O2 nitrous is going, and it is carrying the vapors along with it. Okay. It is exiting the vaporizing chamber, and it is along with the vapors. And now what has happened? This gas, which is carrying the vapors, is joining this gas, which does not carry the vapors. So this bypassed gas will join the gas, which is carrying the vapors. And this, so the overall gas is joining over here, and now it will exit out and go towards the patient. I have drawn something like a cone over here. This is known as a temperature compensating cone. Okay. So we'll understand what is the role of this cone and what does this do. Okay, in a little bit of time. Now next we'll understand is what is this dial setting, and who is deciding how much gas will go in bypass, how much gas will go down towards the vaporizing chamber. You have to keep in mind these two most important chambers, bypass chamber and vaporizing chamber. Who will decide how much? If I am giving 2 liters O2 plus nitrous, how much will go through bypass and how much will go to vaporizing? Who will decide that? That is decided by your dial setting, this 1% that I have put here. Okay. So there is something known as splitting ratio of the fresh gas. Okay. Something known as splitting ratio. What is this? It's simple. By its name only you can understand there is a split between how much will go to the bypass chamber, how much will go to the vaporizing chamber. How will the gas be split, the fresh gas? So this I told you is going to be determined by what? The dial settings. This is going to be determined by what? The dial settings that I have set on my vaporizer. You know that we cannot mix the agents, right? A vaporizer is calibrated for a particular anesthetic agent. Can I use sevoflurane? Can I empty sevoflurane and isoflurane vaporizer and use that same dial settings? Will it work? No. Can I put isoflurane and sevoflurane vaporizer and use it? No. All these variable bypass vaporizers are calibrated for that particular agent only. Why? Why is it calibrated for that particular agent only? Because of this dial settings and the splitting ratio. Now, I will just explain to you this dial setting. Okay. And then suppose we have isoflurane and we have CO. So if I put dial setting 1%, 2%, 3%, okay? The isoflurane splitting ratio is as follows. And the sevoflurane splitting ratio is as follows, okay? What is this? Can you see that the split? So if I tell you isoflurane 1%, if I set dial setting of isoflurane 1%, 45 parts of the incoming gas will go to the bypass chamber. 1 part of the incoming gas will go to the vaporizing chamber. This is what a splitting ratio means. If I make the iso dial setting 3%, I increase it to 3%. What is happening here? 14 parts are going to the bypass chamber and 1 part is going to the vaporizing chamber. This is the meaning of splitting ratio. Is the ratio same for sevoflurane at 3%? No. Is the ratio for sevoflurane 1% the same as iso? No. So this splitting is specific for every agent. That's why you cannot mix agents between the vaporizers. All right. So is this part understood? Splitting ratio. Now I told you all the vaporizers are calibrated at 1 atmosphere 20 degrees Celsius, right? So this splitting ratio values are obtained for 1 atmosphere 20 degrees Celsius in consideration that we want to use the vaporizer at sea level. All right. Okay. Remember this value. Remember this. I'm going to explain to you now. Dial setting 2%, sevoflurane has a splitting ratio of 12:1. I'm going to explain this to you right now. Okay. Sevoflurane has a splitting ratio of 12:1 for a dial setting of 2%. I have kept sevoflurane at 2%. At 2%, the vaporizer is calibrated for 12:1 splitting ratio. Okay. And I have kept my fresh gas flow at 2 liters per minute. Okay. So I have taken oxygen nitrous and my total flows are 2 liters. Okay. This is an example. Now, how is it going to be dividing? Let's see. Okay. So this is 12 part and 1 part. Okay. Which means what? That this 2 liters, which is 2000 ml incoming fresh gas. So over here, this 2 liters incoming fresh gas is coming over here. It's going to get split to bypass and vaporizing. This is just a channel to reach here. Don't be afraid of this spiral tube. What is this? It's just a route for it to split. It's a route. Here it's going 1 part and 1 part is coming here to the vaporizing. That's it. So this we have to understand, and we have put a dial setting of 2% for SIBO. Okay. So it is telling me 12 parts going to bypass, 1 part going to vaporizing. So how many parts it has been divided into? So it has divided into 13 parts. Just stay with me with the mathematics. Okay. When you solve this, it comes to 150 ml per part. 150 ml per part. Stay with me. This means that 150 ml of that gas is going to the vaporizing chamber, and 12 into 150. So 12 into 150 will give me what? 1850 ml is going to the bypass. More, always remember, more goes to the bypass, less goes to the vaporizing chamber. If I send more amount, if I send all the 2000 ml to the vaporizing chamber, imagine the amount of vapors that 2000 ml will pick up, right? Ultimately, I will not get an output of 2%. I will get an output of 20-30%, which I don't want. That's why we are having this splitting, because we want to dilute it and bring it to the setting which I want, which is 2%, which I have set. That's why we are doing the splitting, right? So major chunk, always remember, major chunk is always going to the bypass, and the minor chunk goes to the vaporizing chamber. Is this understood how this splitting occurs and how it decides how much goes where? I told you, remember that table, saturated vapor pressure table at 20 degrees Celsius? The saturated vapor pressure at 20 degrees Celsius, 1 atm for sevoflurane is how much? It is 21%. Go and see that table. It is there in that table. The saturated vapor pressure for sevoflurane at this is 21%. Okay. Where is this 21% getting produced? Where is this saturated vapor pressure being produced? Saturated vapor pressure, vaporizing chamber. So it's produced here in this vaporizing chamber. Saturated vapor pressure is generated in this vaporizing chamber. And for sevoflurane at 20 degrees Celsius, 1 atmosphere, it comes to 21%. There is 21% concentration of sevoflurane here. I want to give 2% output. I don't want 21% here. This is 21. I need to dilute it. So this 20, that 150 ml, okay, so for example, if I was carrying 150 ml oxygen, we just calculated, right? That one part, which was 150 ml for a 2-liter flow, 150 ml was going to the vaporizing chamber over there. That in that, suppose this was gas, okay, suppose it was oxygen gas, only oxygen. So 100% O2, 150 ml was going to the vaporizing chamber, was going through the vaporizing chamber, right? And now there is 21% of sevoflurane over there. So what's going to happen? It's going to get, its concentration of oxygen will decrease, right? So this will come down and become how much? It will become 79%. What is the composition in the vaporizing chamber now? Composition of vaporizing chamber is 79. If 100% volume is there, 100% volume in the vaporizing chamber, 79% of it is occupied by oxygen, 21% is occupied by sevoflurane. Okay. So how will we know? So this I'm telling you here that this 150 ml oxygen came here. 150 ml of oxygen is over here. Okay. And when it was coming over here, this was 100% oxygen because all the gas was occupied by, all the space was occupied by oxygen. But here, who is there to occupy the space? Sevoflurane vapors are also there to occupy space, to occupy volume, right? So 21% is occupied by sevoflurane. So now 79% is going to be occupied by oxygen. Okay. So now how much is, now I know 150 ml oxygen is there. Okay. So how much sevoflurane will be there? That we have to understand. So if I tell you 150 ml space is occupied by oxygen, okay, that means 79% of the volume of the space, let's keep it as space so it makes it easy for you to understand, is occupied by 150 ml of oxygen in that vaporizing chamber. And in that vaporizing chamber, 21% of the space is occupied by sevo, right? I told you pressure is the same as volume. We can use this interchangeably. So here we have 21% of the space is occupied by sevoflurane. So how much ml of sevoflurane does that mean? How much ml sevoflurane is there? So when you solve for X, you will get that the value comes to 40 ml sevo. This 150 ml of oxygen, which is going through the vaporizing chamber, will now pick up 40 ml of sevo. It is 150 ml oxygen plus 40 ml sevoflurane is going up. It has joined with 1850 ml oxygen. Oxygen, my incoming oxygen was 2000, right? My outgoing oxygen also will be 2000. I'm not going to lose oxygen somewhere here. So this outgoing oxygen is 2000. Plus, I have 40 ml of SIVO, which has joined my oxygen. So my total output is how much? 2040 ml. Here we have the filling port from where we're going to fill the anesthetic liquids. All right. And here there is something which I've drawn, which is known as a temperature compensating cone. Okay. So now whatever variable bypass vaporizers, like I'll show you some photos. So you can understand which are the variable bypass vaporizers. Okay. Image of variable bypass vaporizer Tech 5. Okay. So this is above what we can see is the structure of the vaporizer externally, and below what we can see is the internal structure of the vaporizer. So all these vaporizers which I'm going to show you, so these are variable bypass vaporizers and they're temperature compensated. Okay, so that's why the name Tech has come, because of temperature compensation. So you can see this vaporizer, it's got all the parts which I have drawn over here in this schematic diagram on the board. Okay, so this is the image of Drago Vapor 2000. Okay, above you can see the image of this Drago Vapor 2000, and below you can see the schematic diagram. Again, this is a variable bypass vaporizer. Again, all the parts are almost the same, except that can you see that there is something over here beyond the zero? So can you see here there is a zero mark here, and then there is something known as a T. So this vaporizer, it's got something known as a T setting on the concentration control dial, which is a setting for when you want to transfer the vaporizer. That is when you want to remove this from the back bar and you want to change it to another machine. So this is the image of Drago Vapor 19.1. Okay, this is of isoflurane again. So this is for all agents, but this is except desflurane. So this is again variable bypass vaporizer. Okay, so we have the image externally how it looks, but can you see doesn't have that T setting? There is no option of transfer in this. Okay, internally the structure is the same, the physics principle is the same. It's just that internally all these vaporizers have some internal modifications, but overall the basic features are the same. Something that we're using very commonly, right? Very familiar image. So this is Tech 7. Again, this is a variable bypass vaporizer. Okay, so can you see I have labeled the things over here, right? So here we have this interlocking system, right? Interlocking system that is there over here, it helps to fit the vaporizer on the back bar. This locking lever to turn on the vaporizer. So this lever, if you must have seen, so this is to switch on that vaporizer. Behind this dial, there is a button that you press, and when you press it, you can turn and switch on the vaporizer. Okay, so this is again a variable bypass vaporizer. This is Tech 7. Again, this is a variable bypass vaporizer. Okay, this is Penlon Sigma Delta. Again, we are using this. Okay, so again, the internal structure. So that was Penlon Sigma Delta. Okay, so internally, all of them are running on this basic principle of variable bypass. Okay, this is that all of them have got a different structure within themselves. So now just quickly we'll go through this. So as last time I told you, right, the splitting ratio will determine how much goes where. So for sevoflurane, when I keep the dial at 2%, okay, 12 parts of the inhaled agent. So when 12 parts are going to go to the bypass chamber. So when I see 2000 ml of incoming oxygen gas, and when I divide that into 12 parts, so 12 parts means 1850 goes to the bypass chamber, and the remaining one part, which is 150 ml, will come through the spiral tube towards the vaporizing chamber to pick up the vapors. Okay. What is the role of the temperature compensating cone? Now, this cone also will alter the quantity of how much goes where. Even this determines, not only this, right? Even this cone will determine how much of the inhaled fresh gas goes through bypass or goes through the vaporizing chamber. So as I told you, all our vaporizers are temperature compensated, right? So and all of them are calibrated at 20 degrees Celsius. So this temperature compensating cone is made up of a material such that whenever there is a change in temperature, this cone will either move upwards or it will move downwards. Now this vaporizer which I have drawn here has a cone. It has a temperature compensating cone. There are other vaporizers which don't have a cone, but they are having some other metallic element. Okay, so a thermal element. So that can be a bimetallic strip, or you can have a temperature compensating cone. So these are the two, bimetallic strip and temperature compensating cone. And they are the ones which are going to again alter the splitting ratio. Although we have set from the concentration dial, but here also as the temperature increases within the vaporizer or the temperature decreases, accordingly the cone will move up and down. Now, why will the temperature fluctuate? As I told you, there is something known as latent heat of vaporization, right? So whenever vaporization occurs, there's going to be cooling of the liquid. So vaporization is going on. There will be some amount of cooling that will occur. So if the cooling occurs and the temperature falls below 20 degrees Celsius, then that is when it's going to be sensed by this temperature cone, right? This thermal element is the latent heat of vaporization, right? So there's going to be some amount of cooling over here. When this cooling goes below 20 degrees Celsius, so what's going to happen? When the liquid cools, less vapors are produced, right? So less vapors will be produced, and whatever concentration I wanted at the end, 2%, less than that might get delivered, right? Because less vapors are being produced. So what is the logical thing to happen here? This cone will rise up. This cone will move up. By this upward movement of the cone, because this cone is dipping into the liquid, right? So this, as the 20 degrees Celsius, even this cone will cool, right? So this cooling of the cone will cause it to rise up. And when this cone rises up, less amounts. If 1850 was initially going here, lesser will get bypassed. So maybe 1500 might get bypassed, or maybe a little lesser would get bypassed. And this 150 ml, which was coming over here downwards towards vaporization chamber, more gas will come towards the vaporizing chamber. All right. So if more fresh gas comes, obviously more vapors can be picked up, right? So, and then ultimately what will happen? Our 2% will remain unaffected. In the end, ultimately the output of the vaporizer will remain 2%. It's not like as temperature increases or decreases, our output is going to change, right? So these are all, that's why we say, all the modern vaporizers are fixed output. The output which we have set on the dial, that much only will be delivered. So this is the role of this temperature compensating cone. Okay. As I told you, this how it splits, right? So how much ml is going to be picked up? So I'm sorry, but we are doing this crazy calculation again, but I will just explain it to you. So as in that, we have kept CO is kept at 2% concentration dial on the dial, okay? And this means there is going to be 12:1 splitting ratio. This is calibrated already, okay? It's calibrated in advance for the vaporizer for sevoflurane. Now, when we saw that 12:1 splitting ratio, we already understood how 1850 and 150 comes. So 150 ml is going towards the vaporizing chamber, right? And this is going to be picking up the vapors of sevoflurane. Now, this 150 ml of inhalation of gas that we are saying, it's 100% oxygen, all right, that we are taking. So I have taken 100% oxygen, okay, and that is how much? 150 ml. What is the quantity of this 100% oxygen? 150 ml, which is going to the vaporizing chamber. Within the vaporizing chamber, as a saturated vapor pressure of sevoflurane is how much? 21%, right? So there's 21% of sevoflurane. This is the saturated vapor pressure of saturated vapor concentration, basically saturated vapor concentration. So as I told you, we can use this interchangeably, right? Saturated vapor pressure and saturated vapor concentration, they are derived from one another. So now, because I'm referring to 100% concentration of oxygen here, so I'm referring to, so let's in a percentage, right, unit. So I will also keep this as a percentage unit. So I will use saturated vapor concentration. So within that chamber, there was 21% of sevoflurane, and incoming gas was 100% oxygen. Now what happened? This oxygen got diluted, right? Because now it has encroached with sevoflurane. So how much is the oxygen now? All right. So the oxygen got diluted, and it got diluted to 79%. Obviously, because right now what happened? 21% is going to be sevoflurane, right? In that whole 100% mixture. That mixture is now a diluted mixture, not a concentrated pure mixture. It's got diluted. So now there's 21% sevoflurane within the vaporizing chamber, and there is 79% oxygen within the vaporizing chamber. That 79% oxygen quantity is how much? 150 ml. How much is the quantity of sevoflurane in ml? All right. That is what we need to know. So when we calculate this for X, what do we get? Okay, so 0.21 I will write here because it's a percentage, right? Into 150 upon 0.79 again because it is a percentage. So when I calculate this equation, I get 40 ml. So what does this tell me? That the 150 ml of 79%. So incoming was initially 100%. So 150 ml of 100% oxygen enters the vaporizing chamber, gets diluted because it comes in contact with sevoflurane 21%. Right now, the gaseous mixture over there is 79% oxygen, 21% sevoflurane, and the amount of oxygen which is present in the vaporizing chamber is 150 ml, right? Which came from the splitting ratio. And we have now calculated the amount of sevoflurane that has got vaporized. How much is that ml? It is 40 ml. Okay. So thus we get 40 ml sevoflurane has been added to that fresh gas. How much was the fresh gas flow initially that was happening? It was 2000 ml, right? 2000 ml was entering the vaporizer. Now this 2000 ml is now going to get added with 40 ml SIBO, and ultimately how much gas is leaving the vaporizer? So we have 2040 ml of the total gas that is leaving the vaporizer, which is now carried on sevoflurane along with it. Okay. Now you will tell me, if you want to cross check, oh, is it real? Is it true that 2% sevoflurane is actually getting delivered to the patient? Okay. So you can do the calculations for this also. And even if you back calculate it, so if I tell you, so you will tell me, okay, 40 ml of sevoflurane is present in 2040 ml of total. This is the total gas, right? So if I want to remove the percentage, I'll do into 100, right? So this will give me the percentage of sevoflurane in it, okay? So this will actually give me 2%. It comes to 1.9798. So that overall gives me 2%. Okay. So ultimately the concentration of sevoflurane, which is leaving the vaporizer, is 2%, just as I set it on the concentration dial. All right. So, so there is something known as pumping effect. This effect is actually not occurring right now in our modern vaporizers. We have made a lot of modifications to our vaporizers that we're using in today's time, okay? So that this pumping effect does not occur. So let's understand what is pumping effect. So there is this happens when we are using one high peak inspiratory pressures, okay? When we're giving the high positive pressure ventilation with high pressures, okay? So when we're doing positive pressure ventilation, so when you're doing positive pressure ventilation, it occurs. It also occurs when I use the O2 flush. Okay, so these are the two times when the pumping effect occurs. Now I will draw the vaporizer in a very simple way. Okay. So just understand with me, I have that what I showed you previously. This is a very simple image of that. So pumping effect says that when now, it happens when positive pressure ventilation or oxygen flush is used, right? So what happens is that all of a sudden the pressure over here at the outlet of the vaporizer is, the resistance is increased. So normally what happens, we have incoming fresh gas, which is coming like this, right? How does it normally occur, right? This is the way it goes, right? And what do we have here? That the fresh gas picks up the vapors over here, joins this gas from the bypass and leaves the circuit, leaves the vaporizer. Now, when pumping effect occurs, there is a retrograde pressure. There is a backward pressure which occurs because of this sudden, oxygen flush, a sudden this positive pressure ventilation. There is a back pressure which occurs. Now, what happens because of this back pressure? It's that all the gas over here, okay, this and this gets compressed. Okay, so let's see how this happens. Okay, with this image. So, if I tell you now, there is a back pressure. Okay, there is a backward pressure which is coming. Okay, this backward pressure is causing the compression. So what will happen? All this gas is compressed over here. So there's all this gas which is compressed and it doesn't have anywhere to go. This gas has nowhere to go. It's all compressed over here. All right. Now what will happen? This is at the time when the positive pressure ventilation inspiratory phase, okay, or the O2 flush is pressed. Now, what happens because of this? All the gas comes back. The gas comes back and gets compressed in the vaporizing chamber. The gas comes back and gets compressed in the bypass chamber. Okay. Now, can you see the size difference between these chambers? Bypass chamber is much smaller, right? Vaporizing chamber is quite big in this image. So what will happen? Where will we expect more gas to get compressed and accumulated? Obviously here, because the space is more, right? Now what will happen? Now I have released the pressure. Now positive pressure, the inspiration is done. I have released the oxygen flush, for example, or now I have entered the expiratory phase. Now expiratory phase has come, so this back pressure is gone. This back pressure is gone, right? This pressure is gone. Now what will happen when the pressure is suddenly gone? There will be fast movement like this, okay? So all this bypass chamber, whatever gas was collected over here will start moving out. Same here, vaporizing chamber also, it will start moving out. All these gases along with the vapors are going to now start moving out. At one point when this happens, at one point when this has started, there is a time when the pressure within the bypass chamber will fall. Okay, the pressure within the bypass chamber, obviously because there's so much of pressure collected here. Now, in that when the back pressure is happening, right? Now, when the back pressure is released, there is a certain release of pressure from within these chambers. The pressure from the bypass is released. The pressure from the vaporizing is also released. So, as I told you, bypass chamber is less space occupying, it's smaller, right? So the pressure over here will get released faster. At one point, the pressure here will be lesser than the pressure over here. Okay, so the pressure here is quite less, and this pressure is more. At one point, there will be a relative difference between this pressure and this pressure. So now, initially, this was the only area with the low pressure, and these both were high. So high to low pressure was going very fast. During that phase, now the pressure here dropped. Okay, so this is going in this direction. Okay, so this is already going in this direction, but now this will start flowing in reverse direction also. So what will happen? Now, at one point, there will be reverse movement. Do I have a valve over here? No, I have nothing to protect this reverse movement. So now what will happen? These vapors along with the gas will go in reverse direction. They will start moving in reverse and go via the bypass chamber. What will this cause? This will cause a very high amount of vapors getting delivered to the patient. Is this the right way for the vapors to travel? No, it's the wrong way. So, but this is happening because of pumping effects. A lot of, vapor-rich gas is now coming here in the bypass chamber. Plus, it's going from here. So imagine there's so much of vapor getting delivered. More than expected is getting delivered. Okay, more the concentration that is finally leaving is much more than what I have set. So this was the problem that was expected. Now, how can I avoid this problem from happening? Okay, so what they said is you can do a few things. They said you put a check valve over here. So one thing what they did was they put a check valve. That is one way that you can prevent the pumping effect from occurring. Okay. The second thing what they told was that this chamber is very big. One of the problems is what this chamber is very big. So a lot of vapors, lot of gas, lot of volume is present over here. That's why it's able to go like this. If less was there, it wouldn't travel so much. No. So what they said, we should reduce the size of the vaporizing chamber. So what they did, they reduced the size of the vaporizing chamber. So the second thing is decreased size of vaporizing chamber. The third thing what they said we can do to solve this problem is that they said, okay, this gas is returning back. Can we, prevent the gas from entering the bypass chamber? Let's think, how can we do it? So what they said, this tube which was straight, we will change it. This incoming tube which is there, we'll make it curved. So what they said, we'll make it curved. Now what happened by making this tube curved? The length of the tube obviously increased by increasing the curves. So in case, even if the back movement occurs, how much will it go? It will not finally reach here. It will stop somewhere here in the midway only. It will not, the return won't occur and reach all the way to the bypass. So they made a spiral tube. Okay. So these are the three ways by which pumping effect can be overcome. And all our new vaporizers don't have pumping effect because they've got all these properties in them. Is this understood? So how is the variable bypass vaporizer going to react in different ambient pressures? Okay, that is what we need to understand. So first we'll understand hypobaric situations and then we'll understand hyperbaric. Okay, so let's start with hypobaric. So hypobaric environment means what? Somewhere at a higher altitude, right? So at higher altitude, the atmospheric pressure is less. So decrease in the atmospheric pressure. You all agree with me, right? Now, if there is a decrease in the atmospheric pressure, what will happen? The fresh gas that the patient is getting, okay, there will be decrease in the partial pressure of that. Decrease in the partial pressure of the fresh gas flow, which means what? Say there's oxygen, nitrous, okay, these are the fresh gases which we are using, right? So if it is, for example, if I'm at sea level and I'm using 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous, which is my fresh gas. So this gives me 380 and 380 partial pressures of individual, right? If I'm going to a 10,000 feet altitude, if I'm going up to the mountains and the atmospheric pressure is 500, that means my partial pressure will come down to half of this, right? So because 50-50 I'm using, so this comes to 250 and 250. Therefore, partial pressure of the fresh gas that I'm using will reduce at a higher altitude. Okay, but what you need to remember is that the partial pressure of inhalation agent is going to be unaffected. Please remember the partial pressure of the inhalation agent is going to be unaffected. What I mean is that, so if this is my vaporizing, so I have the vaporizing chamber right over here. So this is my vaporizing chamber over here, and I have the fluid, and these are the vapors of sevoflurane or isoflurane, for example. These vapors and the property of this vaporization, the saturated vapor pressure, which is generated over here, it does not depend upon the ambient pressures. It does not depend upon where my, what is my surrounding like. Am I in the submarine or am I in the, mountains? Around this outside, what the pressure is, it doesn't matter. So this is independent of the ambient pressure. You need to remember. Okay. Next. So, but what happens is that we know that the partial pressure is going to be unaffected because saturated vapor pressure is not affected. But what we see is that whatever we have set at the dial, so if I have set it at 2% CO, okay, my dial settings are 2% CO. Actually, when I go and see and try to calculate, this might show me an increased value. It may show me an increased value of this. An increased value may come. So we'll try to understand that how the partial pressure is the same. Okay. And I told you all will tell me, ma'am, you told me partial pressure and the volume percent which is there, it's interchangeable. We can calculate one from the other, right? So if you will tell me, ma'am, you tell me the partial pressures are the same, then how come the volume percent is increasing? It should also be the same. That will be your doubt. So let's understand how that if the volume percent, although it when we calculate it shows that it has increased, but in reality the partial pressure is still the same, and in reality the amount which you have set, it is actually that only which is getting delivered. All right, although you might calculate, you might get it more, but actually the amount that you have set on the dial is what is getting delivered. And that's why when you go at high altitudes, you're not supposed to keep altering the dial. You don't have to be like, okay, I'm at a higher altitude, let me reduce or increase. We'll understand that later. So you don't need to do that. You want to deliver 2% sevoflurane, you set it at 2%. You don't need to alter that. Okay. And we'll understand why we don't need to alter. Take an example which is from Miller's only. Okay. So they have taken the example of isoflurane. Okay. So isoflurane at atmospheric pressure where we are at 1 atm. Okay. So the dial setting what they have kept is in 0.89. This was an experiment, okay, which they had done. Okay. And we were at 1 atmosphere, that means at 760 mmHg was our pressure, ambient pressure. Okay. And at this pressure, what they found out, what is the map? Obviously, we can calculate the map from this 0.89, right? So minimum alveolar partial pressure over here was calculated to be 6.8 mmHg, which is getting delivered to the patient. All right. And this now what happened was we took this isoflurane vaporizer to 10,000 feet altitude. Okay. So now suppose we are at 10,000 feet. altitude. So at 10,000 feet altitude, we have kept the dial at same. We have kept it at 0.89%. Okay. At 10,000 feet altitude, 1 ATM value will obviously reduce. It is to 502 mmHg at the value of the, not 1 atmosphere, sorry. The value at the altitude is 0.66 ATM, okay, which is 502 mmHg. This is the ambient pressures at an altitude of 10,000 feet, okay. Here what they found out, the map, when they found out what the map was, it was 8.7 mmHg. Okay. Too many numbers, don't get confused. Okay. Too many numbers, but we don't have to get confused. So now, Mach value, how we calculate? Mach is V by V percent, right? As I told you in the previous class, all right? So this is what? Minimum alveolar partial pressure upon the ambient pressure. This is the formula. This is the formula of Mach. So if I do it for this over here, if I do 6.8 upon 760, a percentage, I will get this answer, 0.89. Okay, V by V percent. Now I want to see that when I am over here at this altitude, how much is it? Okay, so let's calculate. So here they found out 8.77. Okay, 8.77 was the Mach. Ambient pressure was how much? 502. Okay, 502. Okay, and then into 100, which will give you the volume percent, right? So what they did, they found out and they found the answer to be 1.7%. What was the answer they got? 1.7%. So they found out at 10,000 feet altitude, when I'm using isoflurane at dial setting 0.89, I'm using a dial setting of 0.89. The scientists said, but I'm getting a calculation of this. What is happening in reality? They got confused. They said, my dial setting is 0.89. I know I have calculated my map. I have they have done all these map readings over there, minimum alveolar, the partial pressure readings. They have a set of readings and they have checked it. And they said, okay, the readings is this much. When I'm doing this, solving this equation, it's coming to this much, 1.7. 1.7 is the double of 0.89. You do it. Okay, you multiply 0.89 into 2, it will give you 1.7. So they got confused. They're like, this volume percent is becoming double. Okay. But this map value which is there, this map value, it is 8.77. Here it is 6.8. Let's make it easy. 8.8. If I take this 8.8 and 6.8, the partial pressures increase only by 2 mmHg. Only 2 mmHg. But how can I calculate and get a double? If it has to be double, even the map should become double, no? So then they realized that they said, okay, let me see that when I give a map of 8.77 at normal ATM, okay. So what they did, they said, okay, we'll do one more calculation and check. Suppose I am giving a minimum alveolar partial pressure I am getting at a 760, ambient pressure. Suppose I am back at the sea level. So what is the calculation of this? They found out. So the calculation of this came to 1.15%. It came to 1.15%. Then they realized, okay, so the difference is that the issue is that the denominator. Then they realized that this, as the denominator keeps changing, the value of the Mach, that is the volume concentration, is changing. But in reality, what is it? In reality, the partial pressure is almost negligible, right? The difference. So then they found out the difference. Okay, so what they did 1.15 minus 0.89, okay, between both the percentages. And they saw, okay, this 2 mmHg difference in partial pressure means how much difference in volume percent? So they realized it is only a 0.26%. Actually, it is only 0.26% of volume percent difference. But when I calculate, I get more. So they realize we should not rely on the calculations of volume percent. We have to rely only on the minimum alveolar partial pressure. All right. So then they said, okay, the problem is because the ambient pressures are changing. But ultimately, the partial pressures are actually the same. They're not affected much. Okay. So And we know that a depth of anesthesia, right? Do we depend on MAC values? Do we depend on volume percentages? No. What do we want? Partial pressure equilibrium, right? We want partial pressure equilibrium. We want this minimum alveolar partial pressure. This is the most important value for us, not this calculated value. So then they said that we don't have to rely on the denominator. Okay. So now and therefore we do not have to adjust the dial settings. All right. All this after doing this study and all this understanding, that is what they derived in the end. So your take home message is that if you're using a variable bypass vaporizer on the mountains, okay, or you are, maybe you're in a Leh, Ladakh or somewhere, you have to conduct anesthesia there, or maybe you're down in a submarine somewhere, you have to conduct anesthesia there, or some, different environment. You do not have to keep changing your concentration control dial. You set it as to what you want. Okay. Misfilling can occur, okay, among the safety features, and there are some hazards. So misfilling is one of the hazards. Misfilling, by its name, it suggests that you might fill the wrong agent in the wrong vaporizer. All right. And so therefore we have agent specific keyed filling. There are specific, the fillers are different for every agent, right? So that ensures that we do not have misfilling. Then overfilling. There is sometimes overfilling can occur, right? So that will happen when you are not able to see that glass, right? You see the glass, sight glass, and you know what is the level of the liquid agent, right? So that glass is not there or not working properly, you might overfill. Okay. So now, as I showed you in the last diagram, that how sevoflurane had it from the side. So that the port of the filling port, which is there, what they do to prevent this problem, they keep the filling port lower down so this is the vaporizer. The filling port is somewhere located downwards, down over here, very close to the vaporizing chamber, so that there is no chance of overfilling. It was over here, suppose it would overfilling, there would be a higher risk of having more overfilling. All right. Then there is a problem of tipping which can occur. So whenever you're removing a vaporizer, if you don't remove it properly, you tilt it and all. So if you tilt the vaporizer, obviously the liquid agent will go up and enter the bypass chamber, right? And dangerous quantity of the agent might actually go to the patient. So tipping is one of the issues which is there. So that's why what Draeger company, they put the option of T, which is a transport. Okay, so in that condition, if you have tipping, still the liquid agent will not enter your bypass chamber. Okay. Then there are leaks which could occur. Okay, if your vaporizer is not fitted properly. Okay, so you might have loose caps and you may have spillage of your anesthetic agent. And how would you come to know? You will get the odor of the agent. All right, or less amount of agent is actually getting delivered to the patient. So that's a sensor is there which will give you an alarm regarding that. So these are like some of the hazards which can occur, and there are some safety features which are there. Then say single agent delivery, right? You do not want it should not be like you can switch on two agents, right? Only one agent. So that's why interlock system has been provided. Okay. So next class, so here we are done. Next class we will do desflurane vaporizer and the Aladdin cassette.